meeting of the Ukiah Unified School Board. I guess I got to get closer over here. Is it on? Yeah. And I'd like to welcome everyone for coming tonight. Just a reminder, we would like you to silence your cell phone and electronic devices. If you have something you would like to address the board about, please fill out a public comment form and present it to our executive assistant prior to the beginning of public comment. Public comment is taken for items not on the agenda. Each speaker is given 3 minutes. Public comment for items on the agenda is taken at the time of the item, and each speaker at that time is given 3 minutes. So again, welcome, and I would like for Barbara Ganter is Barbara here? There she is, in the back, to lead us in the flag salute, please. Please stand.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Barbara. At this time, we have a report out from closed session. I'd like Superintendent Kubin to help us with that.
The board approved of a leave of absence request of .2 FTE for a certificated staff member for the 17-18 school year. It was roll call vote 7-0. Regarding a classified leave of absence request through part of the rest of this school year, it was moved by Fernandez, seconded by Van Sant. Roll call vote 7-0. An additional leave of absence request for 17-18 for a certificated staff member, a .4 FTE leave of absence request for 17-18. There was a roll call vote taken to approve 7-0. Regarding a leave of absence request for this school year for a classified employee, it was approved through a roll call vote 7-0. The board also approved in a roll call an unpaid leave of absence for a paraprofessional to serve in another UUSD position and maintain district benefits. That was 7-0. There was a leave of absence request approved for a classified employee for the remainder of this school year, and it was a roll call vote approved 7-0. That is all.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, we would like to approve the agenda, but we would like to remove item G1 from the agenda as we.
I move approval with G1 tabled.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, our student advisor, Devin, is here. Would you like to share with us what's going on at the high school?
Yes, of course. Welcome back, everyone. So our staff member of the month of January was our band teacher, Miss McCombs. Miss McCombs recently hosted the Hearts for the Arts music show last Friday, and coming up soon, the UHS band will be in the Sonoma and Humboldt County Honors Band Competition, continuing to build our music department. In academics, our MESA program has an outstanding 28 students with 4.0 GPAs or higher, which is about 25% of our MESA students. Also, UHS has a robotics team that will be competing in Yuba City and Shasta in the U.S. Navy underwater robotics competition this weekend. In our CTE classes, we had our first group of students qualify for the ACE-SE, which is a test that certifies students in entry-level auto mechanics. We also just added our new CAD class, which is our computer-aided design using state-of-the-art industry software. In athletics, our wrestlers have had a successful season, going undefeated in league dual meets, placing high in all tournaments they participated in. And they will be heading down to the NCS team championships this weekend, most likely placing first after all the teams that they beat. And they are ranked to be #1 in the NBL league. Also, and the girls basketball team made it to playoffs. They will be having a home game on Tuesday. Yes, I'm not sure who they are playing yet, but that will be announced. Gearing up for next year, UHS did online scheduling for the first time. Last week, student leaders toured incoming freshmen, showing them around the UHS campus and introduced them to elective classes that they could take. On the 22nd, there will be an open house welcoming and informing the freshmen and their families to the UHS campus. And that's it.
Thank you. That's a very stellar report. Good to hear that. At this point, are there any public comments for items not on the agenda? Okay. We have reports now from our employee organizations. So CSEA, Lisa, will you give us your report?
I really don't think I need my phone, but. Tell the video, fix it. For the camera. Is it on? I am in technology. Shh. Good evening, board members, superintendent. How are you guys? I apologize for my absence last month. I had yet another family emergency. February is Have a Heart Month for CSEA. Each February, CSEA members make an effort to replenish the assistance fund. Some chapter members vote to take a certain amount of their general fund. Others hold fundraisers like bake sales or bingo tournaments. Even passing a hat at a chapter meeting. Members can also make an individual donation. During the tragic fires in Lake County, it was from these efforts that CSEA was able to donate funds to their members to help in effort to rebuild the members' lives. Service to others is one of the most unselfish acts of kindness there is. Last year, 57 members were helped throughout difficult times by their union through the association fund. I always say this name wrong. Andrea. Andrea Martin, a member of Lake County Chapter 228, received $1,000 when her home was ravaged by fire. She was extremely grateful for the help from CSEA family. During our negotiations with the district on January 24th, we agreed to the MOU for reduction of classified hours to the director and child care provider of Small Wonders Preschool due to the decline enrollment. We agreed to revisit in October to assess the enrollment and increase of hours of the two positions if the enrollment comes back up. That was voted on and ratified by our members, and our chapter is excited to report that our members voted to donate to the CSEA Assistant Fund to help support our community and members that may be in need. Thank you for letting me be of service.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. And I would just like to compliment you on the article in the newspaper. I thought that was a very good article, very well written and interesting. Thank you. Hey, Terry DeSelke, UTA.
Good evening. I have just a few things to share tonight. We have board buddies up and rolling. I hope that all of you, if not all of you, will be contacted by your board buddy to talk about some different issues that have been coming up in rep council meetings. And I think, or Carolyn, I think we're still working on getting Kathy Merritt to be your board buddy. So.
Carolyn's really a nice person. You shouldn't have to bribe anyone.
No, I mean, you should have a raffle on that.
It's just that I've been out of touch, so we're working on that. She says she knows you, that you're friends, so. I know that we've been negotiating, and we opened up class size, and Deb and I met with some of our high school teachers earlier this week, who teach AP classes, and listen to their concerns about their class size and their load of what they're doing. It's really amazing. I know I said that last time, and I've put that out in my president's report. But it really is amazing what is going on in AP classes, and that we have 400 and something students taking those classes and 21 different offerings for them. So we're hoping that that also comes to negotiations now that class size is opened up, because it'd really be helpful for them to have smaller class sizes. We're going to be having a rep council training in March. We have our CTA lawyer, well, not lawyer, but we have George, who's our CTA person who helps us out with things. He's going to be putting on the training for our reps. We've invited some new teachers, some teachers who have maybe not been so involved in the union. We want some new blood in the union, so we're hoping that we can get some people out to dinner. We applied for a grant, so we're having Chop Chop do a catered dinner. And then putting a new app on our smartphones, CTA 360, so that the reps can go back to their school sites and do a survey with new teachers to find out what they need. What are their wants and needs from the union, and do they even know about our union? Because as we know, unions are not really in the limelight as something good these days, and they really are. They really serve our members, and we feel like we serve our members and represent them. There's an LCFF spring workshop coming up by the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, and this workshop is going to be happening in Ukiah. It's open to union members. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about it. I know I'm registered for it. I think it's at the end of March or the beginning of April. It's on a Saturday. So it'll be interesting to see who goes from our school district, but I'm looking forward to that. And we have 7 teachers who are expecting this year. One of our disability insurance standard has given us some new parent things to give to these teachers, so that's how I know that they're.
Oh, because I thought they were going to give out contraception.
No.
I just thought, where are you going with
So
this? The
I
insurance
just
company
thought that was
involved?
really great that the disability insurance company would say, hey, if you need to take off some extra time, we're here, you can apply for this, and then they're sending out new parent kits. So that's kind of cool. And then lastly, I know that you're going to be talking tonight about middle college. At our last rep council meeting and with some of the high school teachers, there was just some concern about 15-year-old girls on campus with adult males and how that's going to be handled. So I'm hoping that you're thinking about that, because our number one major concern, as well as yours, is safety of our students. That is a concern, and I don't know what the answer is. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Our leadership. Yes.
Can I say something?
Certainly. Thank you.
I just wanted to let you know that I love my board buddies, and thank you very much. They are very sweet and very informative young ladies. Thank you.
And I do think that's a great program if you find one for me. So our leadership team report tonight is Rachel Prosser from Oak Manor School is going to tell us what's going on there. Hi.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. This thing is right there. If you want to pass the art down, I wanted to show you guys what we've been up to. We have an amazing guest artist who's been coming and doing things with children. The penguins are from the kinder. The first grade have been watercoloring octopus. When you get to the end, you'll see the Van Goghs and the Monets and the Paul Klee's tree. They're children's own versions of those. Children are learning color theory and learning about the artists that they're replicating in their own style of work. It's an amazing thing. We're very grateful to have the extra funding to have this art. It's been very successful and well-received on our site, and we noticed that it's being funded for next year, and we're very excited about that, too. I'd also like to thank Gail and Tyler and Megan for visiting us on Tuesday. We had a good time. It was Valentine's Day, and I invite you to come back again, and we'll look at some math. So on the art also, I wanted to say that we were able to fund 5 hour-and-a-half sessions per teacher on our site, so our kids are really getting a good quality experience. Oh, the dragons are really cool because they also wrote about their dinosaurs there, and those were from the 2nd grade. It was their own dinosaurs. So we have everything from animals to the masters in our pile there. I love the frogs.
Oh, poor Miss Prosser, she actually thinks we're paying any attention to her.
I know. Look, it's a really good distraction.
There are stories on the back of these, like the dinosaur Bob who ate meat off the floor and had to go to the dentist. The greatest.
Oh, the Van Goghs, the kids that did some, it's amazing stuff. We're really very glad to have that. Next, I wanted to give you an update on how Bridges is going at our site. The Bridges math program is being well received at Oak Manor, and the teachers are working very hard, and they understand that while this year is a prep nightmare, they also feel very supported by the board and by the district with the extra hours and the extra pay and the extra supplies and with all the extra rolls of laminate and paper and plastic bins and all of the things that go with this program that didn't come with the program. Everybody's feeling very supported by that, and we wanted to give our thanks for that. We're very excited about next year because we're doing a lot of the prep for next year now, and children are coming to school and saying, my favorite subject is math. I love the games. I love learning about math. I understand math. And while it's very different than anything we've ever seen before, kids are really excited about it, and our teachers are also excited about that. They do feel very, very supported by our district, so we're hoping that will continue too. Our family liaison has been working with both counselors, our Title VII counselor and our new elementary counselor, who we adore, to improve attendance rates. We've been doing home visits and trying to target our children with high chronic absenteeism. So there's a lot of going out and finding those kids and getting them to school. We've had some success with that too. Then our liaison is also helping to build our new website, working with our school student success coordinator, Jenny Bailey. And she is planning for our Dia de los Niños, which will happen on our open house date in April. That's on the 26th of April. We hope you guys will all come and have some great food and entertainment and fellowship with our people. Our counselor report. The counselor is running several small social groups focusing on specific issues. These have been really key. If there's a bullying issue, she's on it. Like, we'll get a group, we'll find the kids that are doing this or being victimized by that, or the problem disappears. It's really very good. Our counselor is critical to our site, and we are also very appreciative that is continued to be supported by the district. It's been a lifesaver for me, and as a first-year principal, I don't know how anybody ever did the job without the elementary counselor. I really don't. She's amazing and a really critical part of our staff and our team in many different ways. She's also facilitating large groups in classrooms. Teachers will come to her and say, hey, we're having an issue with this, and she goes in, does 6 or 7 sessions with them, and moves on to the next. She's also picked up some time in the after-school program, supporting Ruth Powell, our ACES coordinator, working with kids in small groups that are having trouble on the playground or not getting along or having trouble with friendships. So that's been another thing that we've added recently that has been very successful. And she has also been working very closely with more than 10 specific families. She spends a lot of time with 10 specific families, making sure that they're working with the families on the kids' behaviors, parenting, and also making sure that she's referring them to resources and outside agencies for things that they may need, even if it's laundry vouchers or counseling, outside counseling, behavioral therapy. I mean, she's very well connected with our community and our county, and she's, like I said, she's an asset to us, a very serious asset. Our student success coordinator has been focusing on fourth grade math instruction, working hard to incorporate ELD strategies into math instruction. It's tricky business, but we're working very hard with that, and she's got some of the things that she's been doing. Other people have been going, hey, what are you doing? And they want in on that too, so we're excited about that. She is also gearing up for testing, and we are piloting the new CELT exam. So she is deeply entrenched in learning that test, and she is going to be giving 30 trial run CELT tests in the new format, and each of those tests takes about an hour to give, and so she's working very hard planning for that. And sharing data. She is the data queen at our school. Anything we need, we get it from her, and she's very knowledgeable about that. I'd like to let you know, too, we have had record numbers at our PTO meetings, and that's a really good thing. And we have have coffee with the principal once a month, and we 15 on Wednesday, and that was really exciting. And they come up with all kinds of really good ideas, and I say, okay, let's try that, and they come with their concerns, and it's really nice because I'm able to address those right away, and I've been being very good about follow-through and making sure that the next time I see them or the next time I talk to them that I have an answer for them. I had one volunteer yesterday to help us direct traffic at the end of the day, and he's very excited about that, and we need him to help us direct traffic at the end of the day. So lots of successes happening on our site. We're really excited, planning for next year, and getting things ready to go and closing up this year. And it's exciting times, and I think everybody is feeling very supported, and like we're having success this year, and we thank the board for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. Next, we have a list of donations that have been given to the district this last month. I will read those. We have Redwood Health Club of Ukiah has given a check to Nokomis's PE department. Francis T. Mayer, a check to Nokomis's library in memory of Carla Sankovic. The Redwood Health Club of Ukiah, a check to Oak Manor's PE department. Hydro Pacific, a donation of garden tools for Calpella and Ukiah elementary schools. Canteen, a check for Oak Manor Elementary. Skate City, a check for Oak Manor Elementary. Carol Meyer, a check for South Valley's basketball team. Carolyn Barrett, a check for Ukiah High School's automotive department. Foundation of Medical Care for Mendocino and Lake Counties, a check to support the LVN program. Redwood Health Club of Ukiah has given a check to Calpella's PE department and Eagle Peak's PE department. So we would like to have a motion to thank these people for their generous donations and accept them.
So moved.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
So thank you so much, those of you who donated to our district. Okay. So next, I believe we have Holly Rogers to come up and talk about the middle college program.
Good evening, trustees and Superintendent Kubin. I'm here tonight to bring back the budget options that we had been requested from the last board meeting. I also have with me, wanted to introduce Deborah Pollock, the Vice President of Education and Student Services for the Mendocino College, and Dennis Hazeltine, who is our lead on the task force for the middle college, and not sure your full title.
I am an instructional dean of applied academics.
So we're in different capacities, doing lots of things. So this is in response to the initiative 1.2 in the strategic plan to look at expanding educational programs in our district. And we've been working with Mendocino College collaboratively for at least 3.5 years now on the middle college program. We're in the third year of a modified pilot of middle college that we are running through UISA, and now have the opportunity to implement the full middle college program. We presented at the last meeting what is a middle college, the work we have done, and what our next steps are. We explained that we could bring back a budget proposal so that you could see what the cost would be. Since the last board meeting, we have continued to work with the Middle College Task Force, our consultant, and with many of the stakeholders that are involved in making this new program operational. One of the things that I wanted to do, we've been working on we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of looking at all the logistics of this and trying to iron out all the details. One of the things that we did do was take a look once again at performance data that is looking at the why of a middle college. Why should we have this? What is the strength of this program? And so I just want to present these documents for your perusal, just to show the strength of what middle college programs really have. So tonight, we present two budget options. The budget options represent the additional costs of this program and what it would mean to open up a middle college. Both options have costs with and without transportation. Option 1 starts the middle college next fall, which is in the spirit of the original work started in October. We were looking at starting, so we wanted to present that budget. Option 2, which is our recommendation, starts in fall of 2018. Option 2, without transportation, is included in the strategic plan that is presented tonight, so that if it is approved, there is funding identified as we've presented in the budget. So we wanted to have you aware of that situation. So looking at why we went with option 2. Why would we want to take a look at the same option of starting a cohort of sophomores, 30 in the following year, 2018? And some of the reasons is that it's just taking a lot longer than expected to make sure that all the logistics are in place. We also feel that it would provide a smoother transition into the program. It would allow us more time to better identify the students, to do recruitment, to do outreach, to have families have more time to make decisions of whether or not this would be a program that they would want to pursue. We have many stakeholders that have a lot of questions, and we still don't have all the exact answers lined up for some of those questions. And so we felt that the extra time would be needed to be able to make sure that we have a program that we would know could move forward successfully. So that's why we opted and made the recommendation for option number 2. I know that the board had presented some questions, and I would like to address some of those now. The board presented a question that had concern about what options for the students if we presented it without transportation. And one of the things that we're looking at, MTA gives free passes for Mendocino College students. So these students would be enrolled in a Mendocino College class, so they would get a free pass. We are looking at working with MTA to possibly provide a route that would pick up students at Ukiah High School, so they'd take the bus to Ukiah High School and then be able to easily take the MTA from Ukiah High School to the college and then back. So we are in the midst of trying to figure out what those routes could be and what they're willing to work with us on. So I don't have a true answer to that, but we do know that the MTA would be an option for that. Then you also had a question about whether we projected new ADA. And Katie Summers and myself, when we were looking at putting together this budget and the numbers for the budget, we discussed that. And even though we think we would attract new ADA, we felt like at this time it was such an unknown that we couldn't actually present a budget that would put something in there. It was just something that we felt confident we had to go forward with. There is been a lot of interest. I've talked to different organizations, so until we actually start this and we have time for outreach and recruitment, we really don't want to count on money from new ADA to get started and with that budget. So that's why we presented the budget as it is, which means that the main cost of that first year is in a second teacher. You would have enough students by year 2 to have the ADA cover the teacher salaries, but we don't think we can actually find the perfect teacher since that would have all the credentials to teach all the core subjects that first year. And we're really talking about shifting FTE, from the high school to this site, or from a site to the middle college. This isn't a new position. So we're just shifting where these students are being placed, and teachers as well.
So it would be a new position the first year, but then you would reduce the FTEs at the high school? I didn't follow that.
It's not really a reduction of FTEs at the high school because it's just shifting where that teacher is actually located. So
But in 17-18, it was 98,000, and then it goes to 8,000.
And that's because the second year, we would have sophomores and juniors, so those 2 teachers would be staying there, but it wouldn't be an additional cost.
So this is not cumulative. It's not that it goes from 98,000 back down to 8. It's 98,000 plus 8.
No, so the part of the issue in the first year is, we will only have 30 students, and typically you'd hire 1 teacher for 30 students, but to hire a teacher who is credentialed in language arts, social studies, math, and science is very difficult. And so in the first year, we would need to hire an additional teacher until we got to the second year where we had 2 teachers who could, we'd have 60 kids instead of 30. And maybe you'd hire somebody who has a language arts and social studies credential, which is a little bit easier to find, and authorization, the other teacher in math and science.
But so it's still a net 1 teacher.
It is, we think the ADA will cover it.
But you just said you don't want to count on an additional ADA.
We think ultimately it will cover it. And really, you can kind of think of it as your old school within a school program, but it's not on the campus. It's not on Ukiah High School's campus. It is a school within Ukiah High, so it will be administered through Ukiah High, but its location will be at Mendocino College. Its classroom location will be at Mendocino College.
It's still net 1 teacher though, right? So we're talking about.
Yep.
So in the first year, there's 30 students and 2 teachers.
So that's an extra teacher.
One of those teachers would be paid for by those 30 students from the high school, and it would be included in our FTE that are allocated to the high school.
Right.
The other is that additional 90 in the budget. The second year, there's 60 students. Those 60 would garner 2 FTE in the allocation to the high school for FTE. And so that is why it's not technically an additional teacher, because those 60 students would be issued 2 teachers. Does that make sense?
So it's 1 FTE for 1 year.
Think of it as a startup.
Right.
Yes.
It's a startup
So
cost.
the first year, you will have 1 teacher who transfers, slot, I know, not a person.
Right.
1 teacher slot that transfers from Ukiah High to the college, and
Yes.
you hire a new teacher at the college site.
Yes.
I got it there, Ukiah. The second year, you transfer another slot of, another FTE from the high school up to the college.
Yes, an accounting point of view, that FTE is covered in the bundle of FTE that are allocated to
Okay,
Ukiah
I got
School.
it.
So I think startup costs is a really easy way to view that.
You have an extra teacher for 1 year.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
So those are the questions that I answered, that I was presented with. I don't know if there's any other details you'd like to know at this time. What also we're trying to ask for in a decision right now is that there's just a lot of work that we've done and a lot of work still to do. And by asking you to approve the budget at this time, we secure the funding for starting it in 2018. But we would like to have an MOU in place with the college, and they're on board with this, by the end of this school year, so we kind of lock in that decision to move forward.
We have questions from the board. Trustee Arkin?
Yes, do you have some guarantee or understanding or something that that there are 30 kids out there to do this?
Last year, when we were looking at this information, we took the criteria that we had, which was taking a look at some of the qualifications of what at-risk was that had to do with parent education level and the grade point, and we ran a query at the sophomore level, or actually it was looking at sophomores and also freshmen after their first semester, and we had over 163 students that would be eligible just based on that simple criteria.
What are those criteria?
Well, thanks. The ones that we used just for that query was a 2.5 grade point average or over, so that kind of handles the high potential, but that's not the only criteria we would use for high potential. And then we used parent education level, which would mean the at-risk is defined, one of the criteria for at-risk is defined as somebody whose parents have never graduated from college. So we used that, and we had over 163. So we still need to do those kinds of queries when we're taking a look at recruitment and outreach. But this is a volunteer program. And so again, we don't know, what the interest is going to be until we actually get started, but we're scheduling now for next year at the high school. So we really found ourselves in a bind for really trying to do this in a way that would allow families to make good decisions.
Yeah, well, that I think
I
was my
add to your
question, is how, I see what the criteria is, but you don't know if there are 30 kids in the 165 who really want to do this.
Can I add something?
Sure.
We've been piloting this program, a modified pilot at the middle
Right.
college, and it's been a part-time teacher, and it's been full the entire time with 15 or 16 kids.
Yeah.
From WISA?
Through UISA.
Yes, so they've had to
for the last
enroll in
3 years.
UISA and disenroll from Ukiah High School or
Right.
wherever they are to go to the
And so
program.
they've, okay.
So we think we will be able to do it.
Get
I
another
mean, there's no guarantee, just like there's no guarantee to fill the magnet school at Eagle Peak. We think we will, though.
Okay, Trustee Fernandez?
I think it's a really exciting opportunity for our school and our kids. I think that there are probably a lot of kids who would really benefit from this type of program, and I think it's exciting. I know there's concern about kids, high schoolers taking college courses and being with college students and being there at evening. There are high schoolers can do that now too, right? I mean, that's not a change. They're able to do that now.
Correct. I just got information from the college, presenting it to Superintendent Kubin that she can share with you. But right now, just for spring, we have 75 students concurrently enrolled for spring semester. About 30, some of those are the dual enrollment. But yes, we have, I would say, at least 35 right now that are concurrently enrolled in night classes and in afternoon classes. And that's actually low this semester. We've had many more.
I hope that when you look at it, that you do think about or come up with ways to make sure that the students are safe and to find a way to address that, because it is a concern. But I think there'd be great benefit to certain populations who would really find this an opportunity they wouldn't have otherwise.
And we've discussed this in the task force. It would be very important when we do orientations that we have a clear policy and working with the college. And we've been working with the college on this, and they're very much aware of this, and they have things in place to help support these students.
Deborah.
Trust,
Can I say something about safety? Because it is very important to us. So a couple things, I mean, for all of our students, we have pretty clear, I mean, if there's an issue of safety, all of us drop everything and deal with that issue. And we have a discipline officer, our director of student discipline, and we have a dean of student services, and we have really clear-cut processes for discipline on our campus, as well as a good relationship with law enforcement, if that needs to be. But, so we have those things in place for all of our students. But one thing that'll be stronger, I think, about middle college, so there are kids that come up now and that we have helped keep safe. But if we have the middle college there, those kids will also have, as Holly's explaining, 2 high school teachers there that will be dedicated to them. So they'll be able to, and we'll just have to be really clear about what kinds of things they should bring to them immediately. And the teachers will know who to come to for, at our campus. But, so I think in a way it'll be even safer for the high school kids because there will be Ukiah Unified personnel there that they can talk to also, so, yeah.
Trustee Van Zandt?
I have a couple questions. What, did I miss what this was? No, I can read that. But what?
It's data from other colleges,
So-
middle college programs, just showing you some comparison data of other middle college programs.
So I was thrown off by the Academy of the Redwoods. Is that their middle college kids?
Yes.
Yes.
So-
There's a middle college that we actually visited last year.
It's not this one. I got confused. Okay.
No, it's kind of.
So,
Yeah.
So what I'm reading by this is that the students that are going to middle college they're succeeding at a much higher rate
Right.
than the district as a whole or the school as a whole. That's the point. I mean, that was the
Yes.
main takeaway.
Just the success of
On
and
the-
how they're able to reach pretty high goals in terms of performance.
So are the 15 kids that are going there right now, you said there's 15 kids in UISA that are doing this, are they all children that whose parents have not attended college?
I would say, no, we didn't do that kind of breakdown, but about 50% of them have been. We've had, because it's an independent study program, we didn't start it like a cohort at sophomore, so there were students that started at all different age groups and they graduate early. So
50% of them are that demographic or not?
yes.
And are you going to be limiting enrollment to that demographic? I know you just did a quick screen to kind of check.
One of the things that we can present and share out with you is that we have an application process that's in draft form. We haven't presented that, but it has all the criteria on it. And then we're also looking at the assumption would be that we would have more than 30 applications. And so you have a screening process to screen the student applications that would include kind of ranking some of those criteria, and we have not been able to finish that right now.
Is the intention to give more points if your family is not, if your parents are not college graduates?
Yes,
So there'll be a preference?
there would be a preference.
Okay. You know, I missed last month, so I'm not going to make a big deal out of this, but I am uneasy with this program. I just am unsettled about it. I don't think it's a good idea, but I did miss last month, so I'm not going to create an issue here. But I do wonder about taking our high-achieving students and isolating them elsewhere, even if that's their preference, because I think a diverse campus with a wide range of achievement levels is healthy for the campus. So that's just my thought, but I'll leave it at that. I don't really get it as a program and the value, but that's okay, because I missed last month.
Well,
So I'm
yeah,
gonna leave it at that.
so,
I could offer a brief response because I think that's one of the reasons why I really wanted this program. It's in the strategic plan, and one of the reasons as the high school principal, I think it's important that we're deeply involved in this is exactly the concern that you're expressing is that we have many great programs at the high school. And the part of the conversation about developing the criteria in the application process is to preserve the greatness at the high school. And I think that a key phrase that we used at the last meeting to describe the program and the students is at risk. And I think that at risk in my mind, having spent a long time in high school, at risk, the easiest way that I could describe it is that students that are the high achieving at risk are students that this big campus of 1,600 students presents a social situation and an environment that is actually prohibitive for them to be able to become that high achieving student. And the day that you meet a student that you realize that, oh, that's the problem, that's when you realize, oh, that's what we're talking about. And it's difficult for someone like myself to come to that realization because I kind of thrive in the environment of thousands of people around me and all that energy. Not everybody is that way. And so part of asking for the 1 year when we talked about let's begin in 18, part of it is so that we can more fully invest the work that you're describing and wanting us to do.
So you're identifying the right kids.
Because this is the biggest step, and our issue is that if you're on board and the MOU can be achieved with the college, then we know that the work, because it's an amazing amount of work that we do need to do, then we're all dialed in and we can proceed. We were a little bit, you reach this point in work where you say, okay, if you guys are in, then we're in, otherwise let us know and we can not invest this. Because what you're knocking on that door right now is very, very, it's the most important issue that we face. And you know, so I that's the way that I would respond to that.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you.
Trustee
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So I got confused around the fact that there's 15 students right now who are on the college campus, but there's 75 concurrently enrolled. I'm not understanding the difference.
Well, we have 15 students in a modified pilot program. Not, so we have some of those students that are enrolled, but the concurrent means that there are Ukiah High School students, other UISA students, South Valley students who are also taking courses at the college. They're going up after school, they're going into evening courses. So that's the concurrent.
So these 15 that are hanging out only at the college then, they don't have a teacher there with them?
They go to an independent study teacher, just like an independent study program.
At the college or
at the
Ukiah?
college. He has
Okay,
an office
now
at
I
the
get it.
college.
Okay.
And then they're also taking some college courses. It's not being, that's why we're calling it a modified, because they're not getting the core instruction from teachers and that kind of thing. And it's a different kind of student that can handle the independent study and really be, you know, in a very different environment like that. Than what we're looking at, a little bit more broad perspective for alternative education through the middle college program.
Because the middle college is going to be on the college campus, but it won't have that much freedom like when you're doing independent study, because it'll be a little bit more structured.
Well, yes, it will be a lot more structured. They'll have instruction every day, and they have to meet the minimum requirements of minutes for an alternative setting, which is 180 minutes a week. So we have to figure out an educational plan that meets those core requirements and then also allow time for the college classes. It can be pretty complicated, and we're not done with it quite yet.
If you had to guess, would you say that the students would take maybe 2 college classes and then have, 3 classes with their primary high school teacher? I mean, just a guess or a
We're
ball.
looking at, with sophomores, we're proposing an educational plan that only starts them with 1 college class a semester.
Okay.
And then it does get a little more complicated your junior and senior year with trying to meet all the requirements, because we are focusing on meeting the A through G requirements. So you have a little bit more leeway in terms of how you block your schedule and still allow students some flexibility in their schedule for college courses.
Okay. You mentioned that with the MTA, you were thinking about trying to coordinate it through Ukiah High. Would it have to? I mean, would we have an obligation to the students to pick them up and drop them off at a certain place? Or could they pick up any MTA bus that happens to be near their home and going in the right direction?
They could pick up any bus.
Okay.
We just wanted to know if that was an option that would help parents if transportation or whatever other situations happen. But no, they could pick up any MTA.
Okay, good. How do you make sure that the ethnicity and socioeconomic goals that you want, I assume ethnicity is probably you want it to reflect the district as a whole?
Yeah, I think that, to me, that's all part of the recruitment process. And I think that anybody that's spent any time with me knows that that's one of our goals in our AP classes and all of the different programs that we have, is you just look at the demographics and it needs to look like Ukiah High School. So I think it's pretty straightforward. The numbers are the numbers. And we'll see when we get into recruitment. You know, and
Like Megan, because I thrived in high school, I too am skeptical of this. However, my kitchen cabinet for those of you who don't know, I'm always talking about my kitchen cabinet, and it's like 10 sophomores that sit around my kitchen table and tell me these things. And they are 100, to a person, 100% in favor of this. And they all had people in their mind. That was the interesting thing. They had people in their mind who they thought, you know who should do that? And then they started talking about it. It was really interesting just to hear what the kinds of people that they were identifying. And it was none of the people around the table.
we should meet with your kitchen cabinet.
Exactly. But, well, I mean,
I
they
might
kind
know
of
where to
started
find
talking
them.
about, one of them started saying, you know, the more I think about this, the more I want to do it. You know, one of them did, but most of them are pretty, you know, middle of the road, generic, high school students doing fine. But they all knew somebody who they thought would be more successful slightly in a different program. And I thought that was really lovely, lovely. Yeah. I believe them too, so.
Trustee Arkin?
So these kids would not be there all day? Or they would?
They
They're-
would be. They would be there for,
At the college all day?
yes.
So would they be eligible for any high school activities?
They're Ukiah High students.
Yes.
And we've had some discussions with that, and I don't think we're looking at preventing them from being involved in anything.
Any kind of, oh, okay.
There are some issues sometimes with sports because of the commitment they have with college classes and with their core
But that would be up
classes.
to them, not, they wouldn't be excluded from that if it worked.
That's our intent.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions from the board? Trustee Montero?
I feel like I'm talking about year-round school where I never understood where the other kids were at a different time. So they're going to be at the college all day. Okay, and you're going to have them, try and have them complete the A through G requirements. How does one teacher teach the other 5 classes that are not the college classes? Or am I totally misunderstanding this?
Well, that's why we're feeling like you probably need a minimum of 2 teachers, and that's the extra cost for that first year. But right now, we have teachers that are doing just that in UISA because they are highly qualified through an alternative setting and meet the credentialing standards to be highly qualified. And so there are ways to do that. But one of the things we do recognize is that the real strength of this program is going to be on the teaching and the right students and having the right students in it. So the teachers that we find for this program will be ones that are going to be instrumental in making this successful.
So what you're saying is you'll have a teacher who's teaching algebra, civics, English language arts, and something else.
Well, with 2 teachers, you may have two people, typically a math science person and a humanities person. Right? I think that the other configuration that I could imagine is that it's more than 2 people, it could be 3 people. And you have, because we also have part-time English teachers, we have part-time math teachers. And I think for teachers, one of the things that I would always strive for as an institution would be providing lateral transfer and opportunity for teachers, different teaching environments. And I think that that's a benefit to teachers. And I imagine what we're going to find ourselves in, especially as the students get older, is the need to have a math teacher that can take them, as an example, to trig, and then they may take calculus at the college or something. I think we're going to find ourselves having to have a 0.2, 0.4, 0.6 or whatever it is. And I think if I were teaching, great assignment. And it's a team, and it'll be a family. So,
Because you would have to have teachers who meet the credentialing requirements, just
Right.
as you do at the high
Yes.
school, right?
Yeah, as well as the level, because just because you have the credential doesn't mean that you can take people to a certain level, and this is going to become important.
All right, thank you.
One quick question. If the board decides to approve this for 2018, the next year, the program would continue as it is now?
In August, in August 2017.
The
Right.
UISA program. Well, there isn't any reason at this point to stop it. But we haven't had that discussion with the college.
We'd probably keep it, I would think we keep it going.
Let's have it publicly, let's take a discussion.
We wouldn't have any reason not to have it. It's pretty low maintenance, the way it is now, because it's really, they meet with their teacher and then with their teacher, they decide which classes at the college would be good fits, and they take those classes. And those students are all juniors and seniors. So juniors and seniors have access to our classes. There's no special, they have to do a special admin form, but that's signed off by their parents, their high school principal, but they don't need any extra permissions from us unless they're younger than a junior. So the UISA program is very low maintenance. We have an office for the teacher, and he meets with his students, and unless there's some reason we need to intervene because of a safety issue or something like that, then we.
Okay. And that would be with juniors and seniors then, probably? Most likely?
Most likely.
Okay. Trustee Nelson?
I think this is a really exciting program. At the last month, when I asked why it was cool, the answer was that the success on the proficiency test, the SBAC, was astronomical. The chart that you gave us really shows that in black and white, or in this case, it's orange and blue. I would like to make a motion that we adopt option number 2. Option number 2.
I second.
Without transportation?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Go forth and plan.
Thank you, and we'll keep you updated with how we're moving along on this, too. So.
And thank you all for all of your work.
Yes, thank
We
you.
appreciate our partnership with Mendocino College.
Yeah,
Thank
as
you.
we do, and Holly deserves an awful lot of credit for this.
Okay. All right. Moving right along, we will now go to the strategic plan action plan with Superintendent Kuban.
It is strategic plan revision season, so we will have this on our agenda from now until we approve our strategic plan in June. There's not a new draft plan up. We are working on it right now to get it to the board. We had a couple, we talked about our progress at our last meeting. Katie's going to talk a little bit about some of the data. And it's really here mostly just as an open discussion with the board about any interests that you might have. It's early right now to talk about it. We don't have a draft for you yet. Our plan is to roll forward the actions from 1819 into 1920. We don't have any massive recommended new programs. As I shared with leadership today, our funding is flattening. So we used to have a tremendous amount of new money to decide which new initiatives to fund. And so the funding, we are reaching our target for LCFF, and that coupled with our reduction of free and reduced lunch numbers leaves our funding flat. And so we're not really proposing anything dramatically new in this first draft that we're going to produce in the next couple of weeks. And our recommendation is to continue the positions that have been funded this year into next year. And Katie, you might have some things to add that I missed in that introduction.
So we are looking at continuing most of our programs. We obviously looked at our budgets and wanted to make sure we had enough for middle college and that proposal, so that piece is in there. We've looked at continuing arts and trying to make sure that we have enough funding to support the arts with art materials and guest artists. But for a majority, most of the things are just a continuance of what we're currently doing.
And I'll just add that we had one position that the board approved for 1 year only, and that was the garden and nutrition TOSA position. And so we are looking at funding for that for next year, so we wanted to get some direction from the board around that. We think that, and that position is partially funded through supplemental concentration grant funding and CalFresh funding. And so we're looking at ways to be able to continue that position into next year. Katie and Terry gave a presentation to the board in December about how that program is progressing. And our recommendation would be pending CalFresh funding, that we would want to continue that for another year. So we think we can, next year we have and I know I'm talking conceptually right now and I don't have any pieces of paper in front of you, but as we're looking at budget figures, we think that we will have some unspent money at the end of this year that we'll be able to spend on some technology expenses that we had planned to do next year that would free up some funding to be able to continue to fund that program into another year. And because when you look at our funding over 3 years, we have a slight gap of $72,000-ish next year. And these are not 100% confirmed figures. That's why we don't have a piece of paper. This is hot off the press today. And so we would look at doing our technology purchases out of this year's funding, because we do have to spend all of that funding this year, and free up that money for next year to continue that garden and nutrition coordinator for an additional year. You may have other brilliant ideas, though, of things that you want us to include. And as we go through the next couple of months, remember that the next 6 weeks we'll be doing stakeholder input meetings. And I encourage the public to give us input on how things are going with our current plan and things they'd like to see continue in our current plan. Our sites will be sharing, once we get the draft done and to DAC, our sites will be sharing that information out and getting input from their stakeholders. We'll be consulting with CSEA and UTA and doing our usual highly engaging process around getting input on our LCAP. So anyway, this is just a first discussion with the board about our plan. And we did include our current plan in the board packet.
Trustee Arkin?
So Deb, when are we expected to know about the CalFresh grant?
We don't know a timeline on that, but
Sort of like now or by the end of the year?
Megan, do you have a professional answer for that?
The current contract is on a calendar year, no, it's on a school year. Typically, Health and Human Services would look a couple months before that and start going through the process of deciding whether they would renew a contract or not.
Okay.
So I'd say March, April?
Okay.
Are there rumblings that there could be changes in that funding on the federal level due to the new administration?
I think that's possible. I don't think it would be this next year. I think it could be the following year.
Year out.
And I can't remember in the strategic plan, do we have space and grip money in there?
There is funding for space in the program. There's no funding for GRIP because that is funded through the district attorney's office and the Ukiah Police Department.
Okay. But there is funding for space.
There is.
And are we looking at reevaluating how we do space?
We did get input from teachers after the first semester of space classes, and we will again get input from teachers. We do a survey of the teachers, and Katie has that data. I think it was done in December for the first semester.
Oh, okay, because I'm getting some, yeah, some feedback. Okay, and so we'll get that also from Katie and kind of put it, okay. Thank you.
Trustee Mompera?
I was looking at the budget on page 10, and I know that we have the artist in this, the guest artist was an enormous sum of money, which the board voted to reduce drastically. And I guess I look at $55,000 to provide that service for all of the elementary schools as minuscule. And I would really like to see a summary of exactly how that money was spent and how much each school got, and how many hours that meant that children were receiving the arts instruction in the school. Because I just feel that's not very much money, and I would really not like to be in a position where we are demeaning the artists in our community by paying them such a paltry amount of money to provide such an important service.
I think also we should add in there the, some of the art that you saw go across this was from the Arts Attack curriculum, which some of our classroom teachers teach as well, so we should probably also include that in the number of hours of art. I am certainly sensitive to Terry's comments at the last meeting about the number of additional programs that elementary teachers are implementing in the schools. And so Terry brought it up last meeting with GRIP, with Garden, with Space, with guest artists, with Second Step, with, I think the list is about 7. And so I think that's important to pay attention to. And at some point, it may be necessary to think about prioritizing those additional programs.
And the other question I had was, when you're going down that column, the original amount that we had scheduled for the athletic transportation was $100,000, and it's only $80,000. But then at the last board meeting, we had to add $55,000 to that fund. But that was a couple of months ago, and I'm wondering if that is going to cover the entire rest of the year, or do we still have to deal with spring sports and?
No, that should cover it. Remember at the beginning of the year, we were having trouble having enough drivers, so we were having to charter buses. The high school requested today to look at alternatives to the transportation for athletics, and I told them to bring back a very specific proposal.
What does that mean?
That means that we're sending buses out to athletic competitions. Kids are having to leave much earlier for their game. They're having to leave school much earlier to ride the bus to the competition. And then we're sending buses back with hardly any kids on them because they're wanting to go home with their parents. So we just need to look at it, evaluate it a little bit, and see if there's an alternative way. Vans, for example, might be an idea. But I asked Gordon today to have, to work with Ty Yanez and transportation if there is some alternative way. We'd like to know, and if it's going to cost less, that's fantastic. But anyway, so there's more to come on that topic.
Okay.
Okay, Trustee Van Zandt?
You may not have the answer to this now, but I'm cognizant that we're about to be talking about data, which raises some questions for me, so I'm trying to go backwards a little bit and think about where we're spending our money. Is there a sense that the para time for the combo classes has been money well spent? And same question around the 2 hours of paraprofessional time for TKK. And I'm not asking that because I think that I'm not assuming it hasn't been well spent, but I know these were kind of like just ideas. They weren't particularly evidence-based. So I'm interested in what evidence we have so far on those. You may not know the answer to that yet.
I don't think we have data on that. I have anecdotal reports from teachers of very much appreciating that time. They're able to do more small group instruction with students. And so,
Okay.
anyway.
And then I always notice the daycare program because it's $45,000, and I remember there was maybe one child or something in it, so I just wanted to check on the number of children that we're serving with that.
I won't get that number. We checked in, but that was a little bit ago, so it was that. It was
You mean
still,
at the senior parent program?
The young parent program, it was 2 kids?
How many children are in the daycare portion?
Holly, I was looking at you.
She's looking behind.
Nice try, though, Holly.
How many children?
Right now, we have 4 that are active. We have 2 that come occasionally, and we have 2 on the way.
Oh,
That are using the daycare services, not just the kids, not just the,
The daycare,
they're using the daycare?
yeah.
Okay.
we did not mean that as, we wanted you to encourage more to
No,
fill the
I-
program.
no, but
Just so we understand that.
I do feel like if we should pay attention to a threshold level, and if it's, 1 or 2 infants, think about other ways we can help support those kids. But I'm glad to, not glad, there's a lot more, but I'm,
Be careful what you wish for.
You mentioned that we're going to be thinking about some of the supportive programs we have for the kids. I'm wondering, what is the timeline on GRIP? If it's something that we decide is not an asset to the district, what's the timeline on making that change?
That's a great question that we need to discuss. So we'll find out and get back to you on that.
Because I think if that is the conclusion, I think we should consider that this year. I don't know what timeline GRIP normally starts working, but I wouldn't want to delay too long if there's a decision that needs to be made.
So we'll research that and
Okay.
figure out the timeline.
Trustee Mogart?
I'm glad there's no vote or anything on the strategic plan, but I just wanted to mention that when I look at the attendance and I see that it hasn't gone up, and to me, in my mind, that was probably the #1 priority for the family and community liaisons. So I guess I need to review what is your priority for them, because I'm really surprised that having put 8 people now out there, that we're still not breaking 95. So that surprises me. And that would be something that I would want to look at, is that a worthwhile investment? The other thing is the counselors. I still feel very uncomfortable that we have counselors that are 1 year out of college, just like some of our new teachers who make 30% more. And so I would love to go back and look at that to see if we need 2 levels of counselors, a beginning level and another level or something, but I just think it's unfair, and I don't think their job is really that much more taxing than being in front of a classroom and keeping those children engaged and learning all day. So I think that there's an unfairness there that I would want us to look at as part of our strategic planning discussions.
Anything else? B, Arkin? Trustee Arkin? No. Okay. So, are we moving back to Katie again, or are we finished with the report on the metrics and the suspension of?
We're going to do the metrics next. So just know that this item, strategic plan, will be on the agenda for the next meeting. So next month, we'll have a draft for you of draft #1 of the revision. And so you'll have something a little bit more concrete to discuss. And anything else? Yes? No.
Before the next item, can we take a break to stretch or maybe use the restroom?
Sure, we'll take a 10-minute break. Okay, Katie?
Hi, good evening. So we're here to give an update on the mid-year metrics, and I know you all had an opportunity to look at the PowerPoint. So I just wanted to highlight and comment on a few things and then allow time for questions. So when we look at just our enrollment in general, in terms of race and ethnicity, I didn't put the time series graph, but over time, we have had an increase in Latino students, and our white and Native American populations have gone down slightly, and our other has stayed flat. And then, as you can see, our other subgroup enrollment, one thing that we noted is that our EL population has increased about 1% every year for the past couple of years, so we've been on a slow increase there. So those are some trends that aren't on those graphs, but I just wanted to share that. When we looked at our suspension data, we saw that we had an increase, and some of the reasons we looked at for those increases, we did have a, and if we have other questions, we did have an increase in, I'm going to say it right, expulsions at the beginning of the semester, and all the data that's on here is the first semester. So it's not the whole year, and so when we're comparing some, fall semester to fall semester.
Should we go for a slide from here?
Several slides.
Sorry, I wasn't going to go through the slide.
You are going through the slides,
I am.
though, so
Okay.
you should show them.
We did see that, and some of the things that we've been doing is, at our last leadership meeting, we shared all the data with our leadership. They've been working with their, and analyzed it. They've looked at the data and went back and worked with their PBIS teams. So we've been definitely looking at that as that's coming along, not where we want to see it. And then you can see there were some other steps that we're working on that. Our attendance rates are pretty flat if you look at overall for 13-14. Our regular, there were two different slide sets. One is regular attendance. Oops. So one is regular attendance, and that's the regular type of attendance that we take for students. And then the other chart is showing South Valley because they have a different type of positive attendance. And so I just wanted to show that. That's why it looks like here, we're at 95, but if you go back and look, we're more like 94 because you have to add all the attendance in.
And by the way, this is hole punch to put in your data binder.
Just figured that out.
So you can go home and put it in your data binder.
So when we looked at our attendance data, we saw that we have some subgroups that have below the 95% that we are working with. And then we identified as a district leadership team, we looked at and identified, and we also did this process with the district advisory committee at some grades that have below 95% attendance, which are TK, K1, and 8, 9, 10. And then when we look at chronic absenteeism, the highest rate of chronic absenteeism is in TKK, which is common across the state, but we still want more kids to be in school at those grades. And we do know there are some reasons for that, sickness as they're transitioning to a bigger school and exposure, but we also feel that there are other ways we can help parents understand the importance of being in TK and K. So we talked about next steps. The parent liaisons have reviewed the data at their meeting, and they're working on providing more outreach. Specifically, we really wanted to target on the TK-K1. And then liaisons will be meeting with our communication specialist to discuss more strategies for community outreach. And then we are continuing, we know our Native American students' attendance is not where we want it to be. And so we are working with Pinoleville on the grant that we worked on with them, or I should say partnered with them. And we are working on hiring a Native American family community liaison, and we're in the process of doing that. So hopefully we can work on that. The next sets of data were our reading data. And we also reviewed that today with our leadership. So one of the things we reflected on as we were looking at this data was we started reading teachers in 15-16. So really it was just last year. So we've had reading teachers for about a year and a half. And the first chart that we have is looking at the beginning of the year, this year, to the mid-year assessment and the percent of students that are at benchmark or above. And DIBELS is an assessment that shows indication that students will be successful in reading. And so when we looked at the first chart, we saw that first grade students increased by 7% across the district and at each school. And we've, through our reading teachers, we've had a strong focus on our first year was really strongly focused on first grade. We know how important that grade is. And then this year we also started to look at kindergarten and second grade. So we think that's one reason why we see that first grade is we do have a strong emphasis there. In the second cohort chart, we have second grade students, so we have cohorts where we followed them for 3 years on their mid-year benchmark. So it's not all the assessments that they take, but on the mid, so that we were showing mid-year to mid-year. And what we saw was that our second grade students have the highest percent at benchmark and across all sites over the last 3 years. And we really feel, those students have had the most exposure to the real strong emphasis on first grade that they had last year. And then also, our sites have been working on their RTI structures and looking at that foundational reading. So, and then so we really feel like those second grade students are doing well too because of the support we've given in reading. And then if you go to the third chart, what that's showing is the same grade level over the last 3 years. So looking more programmatically what's happening at each grade level. And what we can see is the grade levels, 4 out of the 6 increased from the prior year. And if you look over across all 3 years, all grade levels have increased on the mid-year. We definitely always see a little dip from beginning of the year to mid-year, so that first slide. The assessment stays the same, but the benchmark that the student has to meet increases. So we do see sometimes that mid-year, and we saw this last year, we have a little dip and then we come back up. So we still have a lot of work to do. Each site has, they maybe haven't reviewed the data in this form, but they've all started to do their regrouping and their RTI structures, both RTI and in class. We really think this data shows that we should continue funding our reading teachers. And we are, today we had our leadership team look at our data, and we're really having discussions around what's the best way to do RTI and what are the different structures. We talked to Frank Zeke today. What are you guys doing? Because their results are looking better than the rest of our schools. We also know, we talked about that we need to focus on providing reading support in kindergarten, and because we still see that, and starting that early. And then the last part is we want to look at 3rd through 5th grade in a little more detail. Many of our sites this year are really looking at 3rd through 5th grade and small group instruction, and how can the student success coordinators help support teachers with small group instruction, because some are really skilled at it and some still need work on that. And we, today in our leadership meeting, we also really talked about how could we target small group instruction with a focused strategy on close reading. So we're going to do some more investigation on that part. So, and I'm talking about this a lot because we had a lot of conversations about it today. So that is our reading teacher data, or our reading data. And then on the CELT proficiency, so the CELT is the assessment that our EL students take, and we want to see our students become more proficient because that gives them the opportunity, that shows that they're more proficient in English and gives them the opportunity for reclassification. And overall, the district, we've increased the number of students at proficient by 1% each year. One of our elementary schools has really shown an increase every year. And then 3 have kind of a, they have a up, down, up. where they've increased in proficiency over the 3 years, but had a decrease in the prior year. And we were discussing that. We didn't know if it was, we had a big reclassification push, and that may have adjusted those numbers. 2 elementary schools have decreased, and so we looked at that. And then 3 of our 4 secondary schools have increased in proficiency over the 3 years. So things the sites have been working on their interventions and making sure that they're looking at their watch lists. We create watch lists so we can identify students that are struggling and provide interventions. We want to continue our work with our student success coordinators. And then the director of EL has already met, but we'll meet again with our principals and site coordinators to look at their data in more detail. We get this data right around, it all comes in, excuse me, around December, but we kind of can pull it all together in January because the students are taking it in the fall. With the new assessment, the LPAC, the English Learner Proficiency Assessment, that will happen. A majority of the students will be assessed now in the spring, which will be very different from what we've had before, but gives us a little bit better numbers. We don't have the summer break and then kids come back. And then we continue to fund the student success coordinators, and we think with a stronger focus on coaching in the classroom and helping support RTI. So those are our findings and what we've looked at for next steps, and I wanted to open it up for questions.
Trustee Arkin?
Oh, I'm sorry, no.
No?
No, thank you.
Van Zandt?
Let's see, I have a couple questions. Do we have a breakdown of the suspension data over time by school site?
Yes, we do, and it's a giant spreadsheet. It's and because we have it by subgroup, by school, it didn't look great on a graph. So we have analyzed that, and we can get that information to you. It's a lot of data to put into one graph. But all the sites, we're about to do our data collaboratives in March, and so all the sites have their data. We, at our leadership last in January, reviewed that data at the site level. But we do have it.
Were there things that you noticed in looking at the giant spreadsheet?
Yeah, we do have some sites that have, increased suspensions, and Jason, I don't know if you want to discuss that, but we have some reasons we think why we have seen some increases.
So we saw some specific increases.
Jason?
Do you want you to go there?
So the specific increases that we saw were things like we had possession of marijuana, for example. You saw the number we had 2 years ago where we had our lowest suspension rate at this point. And again, we're only looking at the beginning of the year. So in that year, we had 10 marijuana possessions. We had 32 this year, for example. Obviously, there's a lot of suspensions that go along with that. We also saw a higher rate in special ed students for different reasons. Obviously, we have some very high-end special ed students with very difficult behaviors at different times. And so that's the 2 places that we saw probably the greatest increase. Also, it's difficult at the halfway mark to tell where we're going to be at the end of the year. 2 years ago, for example, for expulsions, we had 2 at the first semester and we had 24 the second semester. Last year and this year, we had 8 the first semester, and then last year we had a great second semester, so we only came in with roughly another 8. So we'll see how that goes through, and then obviously we're making adjustments to those things, trying to deal with those sorts of issues and seeing how we can better deal with them as we go and analyze the data. Also, now that we have Aries Analytics, I can be looking at those things much more in real time and trying to address those things in a quicker fashion as well as we're seeing those things come up. Those are the 2 areas that I've seen the increase in number that you're seeing first semester.
And thank you, that's helpful. And what are how does this compare to the state or probably the state, county doesn't, is less
So
relevant.
the state is usually somewhere around 4%, and the county's somewhere around 8%, obviously give or take a year.
The county, I feel like comparing UUSD to county is sort of silly because we're half of the students, right?
Actually, the reason why the county looks at 8% is because they have us, otherwise the county would look much higher, quite frankly, and I'm being very, very nice. some of the recent stats, Round Valley's over 15%, MCOE's
Right.
at 21.
But the state is at 4%.
Yeah, the state's at 4%, and much of that also has to do with you have very large districts who can kind of play a shell game rather than expelling somebody. You can involuntary transfer somebody to another school. You get up to 30 days. You also then could have that in-house, special schools for larger districts that you can do that. Again, it's still the kid is moving to another school, but whether or not what you call it. So oftentimes, again, it's a semantics game of what's happening with larger districts that have those resources.
Okay, I have some questions and then I'll have comments near the end, but, I guess it's a question for Katie. Is this the data you were expecting?
We've been talking a lot about suspensions. We weren't.
I meant in overall, just.
Yeah, in terms of, we were not expecting to have higher suspensions, but, as we talk through the fall, we know we've been having some specific issues. In terms of the reading, there's still areas that we still want to work on, but we feel like, yeah, we saw what we wanted. We've seen an increase. We went out and looked at all the reading programs in the district, specifically looking at K1, 2, and 3, and saw a lot of concerted effort that the school sites were doing. And a lot of professional development with our reading teachers this year, and especially really understanding DIBELS and how to take that and then put it into the classroom. How can we help students in the classroom? So yeah, I think we expected to see gains. We always know we'll have areas that we need to work on, and so for that, yes. And in terms of attendance, we still would like to see that higher, and it's mid-year, so we will continue to look at that. We look at the monthly attendance too. There's lots of different ways we can look at it, but that we had seen that attendance coming through our monthly attendance reports.
That's my questions for now, but I'll have a comment later.
And I'll just add, and I agree with Katie on the reading. I'd like to see our attendance rates much higher, and I know in my group in District Advisory Committee, when we talked about this, it was a great conversation, and looking at some of our subgroup attendance being lower than we'd like, there were some discussions around our chronically absent students. Are they chronically absent because they're getting suspended, or are they chronically absent because they're absent for other reasons? So I think digging into that a little bit will help us determine what the best strategy is. But it's a little disappointing. Our attendance today was down 30%. So that's concerning for today, but that's abnormal based on the National Day Without Immigrants protest today. So anyway, that will certainly affect our overall attendance rate, but anyway, I would like to see us, I'd like to see our attendance rates higher, and we're lucky now because we have a whole team of people who can help. I'd also, again, advocate for our county, our district attorney's office helping us with the SARB process. We could really use some teeth in our SARB process for our chronically absent students, so that would be really helpful.
Trustee Montero?
I know on the DIBELS, I know that you don't use it at Grace Hudson for the first couple of years. But my concern is, are you doing some kind of equivalent testing in Spanish? Because the literacy skills are transferable to your second language. And are you looking at those students so that if there are problems, they're getting some kind of help in their own language?
Yes, so next time we'll put that in there. We haven't
Okay.
been putting in the Spanish DIBELS, and it has a different name, and I can't think. Say it again? Thank you. And we'll put that in, but when we met with the principal at Grace Hudson, and today when we looked at our data, their data is, she said, we're looking much better than where we were, and they have response to intervention in both Spanish and English. So as students are transitioning into the English, if they also see that they need support in English, then they get RTI support in English. So that happens in a little bit older grades. But they have been working really hard on their RTI. And when we looked at, we were very, and they've been working hard on it, so it's not like the idea of a surprise, but their data on SBAC improved a lot as well. And then when we look at their DIBELS data, at third grade, they are improving. So they've been working really hard on their RTI structures and their tier 1, what's happening in their classrooms. So yeah, they do. And I'll provide that next time.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Any other questions from the board? I have one question, Katie. I know we're rolling out science standards. Is that correct?
We will, so our plan is for next year to start our awareness. So we have, our secondary folks are ahead of our elementary. So our middle schools have been transitioning from a content specific, so like where 6th grade taught earth science and 7th grade taught life, and earth was physical, and now they've transitioned to a integrated program. And so they've been transitioning units over time so that in 18-19 they'll have transitioned fully to the integrated, or it's 19-20. I can't remember. I have to look at my chart. So for next year, we want to start awareness trainings on NGSS. We feel like we don't want to go, and Terry has been participating in NGSS trainings along with another SSC. And we want to make sure that we transition over the 3 years, so it'll be awareness, deeper awareness, and then we'll start looking at materials. Even though the assessments will start, we have a field test, and then next year would be a pilot, and then we'd go operational. So we want to take that one slow. We know teachers are really working hard on implementing the new math curriculum and understanding the new math, and that we are next to start looking at our English language arts curriculum. So we don't want to have things too close together. So we will start that slow 3-year transition for elementary.
So they will be taking the SBAC with science in
Yeah,
a
it's
pilot
called the CAST, California
CAST,
Assessment
yeah.
in Science.
Yeah.
So this year we are, I always get them backwards. We're either field testing or piloting, and then piloting, thank you, Chris. And then the next year will be the field test in 17-18, and then 18-19 will be operational. So kind of like math, where we won't have materials until 19-20 for elementary. But we just don't want to put it all too close together. So we're trying to space that out.
Okay. I'm just thinking that as we've got that coming ahead, we need to be aware of it and maybe think about a science TOSA at the district level or something like that coming down the road.
And we've had, through our district advisory committee and some of our science teachers, that has been a position that's been brought up as a support as we transition.
Okay. Trustee Van Zandt? Welcome.
After this presentation, I'm seeing the positives in the double scores, because when I first looked at it, it looked like a lot of red. But I'm still struggling with what an appropriate expectation should be from my viewpoint. Because when I look at this data, and we just reviewed the strategic plan, and it's millions and millions of dollars that we've put into this district over the last couple of years above what we used to have. And I feel like I expected to see a little more progress a little more quickly. And I'm struggling with what should be my expectation from my viewpoint. Because to me, it feels like I'd like to see more. So that's why I was interested in your viewpoint. And I don't know how, I'm not sure what our role is as board members to recognize that these things take time, and I do recognize that. I'm not talking about taking any money away from anything, but be really cognizant that our responsibility to spend this money the way our community wants us to spend it and see the outcomes is really, I feel that very strongly. We can't screw this up because we said to the state, give us this money, we know what to do with it, we'll show you results. And I'm just struggling, I just want you to know, as a board member, and knowing what my expectation should be. And I don't know if we have any way to know, I'm not sure how to get to that place where I feel like I know whether my expectations are being met or not.
So when we looked at our SBAC data, we have improved in ELA over time. We improved about 4 percentage points. And some grade levels more than others. And then when you look at slow incremental growth, and it depends on what you're looking at, the state, when they first came out with the rubrics, were looking at anything 2% and above as growth. So they ended up changing that rubric, and we'll give you more information on that later. But so when you look at slow incremental growth, you're looking 2 to 5% incremental growth every year. We obviously would like to see more quicker. And but I would say if you're seeing that type of growth, then that's, that is true growth. And in terms of what you would exactly expect, or, what benchmark you want, I think as long as we're moving forward and we're improving, that's what we want to see.
So if we were just taking the dibbles for that, we do see the improvement in first to second combination, which is nice, but we're not seeing that in the other grades at all. Oh, I mean, that's a generalization. So that's concerning to me. And in terms of the suspensions, I understand there's sort of different statistics, and we won't totally necessarily know till the end of the year, but I do wonder, are we spending our PBIS dollars the best way that we should be? Or is that something we also want to look into? Again, I'm not talking about taking any money away, but do we need to redirect it or shift it in another way? I mean, are we getting everything out of our consultant that we want out of them? If we have a consultant, I've lost track of even what we're doing with the PBIS program, but I do wonder from the board level if we need to look at making sure we're spending our dollars as well as possible.
We are continuing to use our consultant because we felt like our PBIS structures weren't all in place. We had elementary that started earlier, and so our secondary are in their second year. And then we've been using the other portion that's allocated to that is for collaboration with PBIS teams, and I'll let Jason answer a little bit more about what else is happening with PBIS.
I think the other thing to realize too is that if you look at the history of this district and what's going on also is that PBIS is very helpful in certain things and not overly effective in others, meaning that if you look at the thing that I come to you with expulsions for, the 3 most prevalent things are drugs, weapons, and fighting. Fighting, PBIS can help a little bit. The drugs and weapons, not so much.
So what helps with drugs and weapons?
What's that?
What does help with drugs and weapons?
Obviously, home environment with those situations, and some of those things are just outside of our control, and obviously we do the best we can to deal with them as they come into our schools. So I think, those are important pieces that we can't necessarily fix everything. I think that if you look at overall, we've gotten to some numbers over the last few years that are drastically better. I mean, I was at Ukiah High School at times where we would have over 30 expulsions every single year. So the fact that we're, under 20 expulsions last year, not that I think we could replicate that every year, but I also think that, there's been a lot of work done. Also, as we look at what kids are getting suspended for and what some of those behaviors are, I can look at those things like disruptions and things like that and look at those things that PBIS does help. And so we can look at some of the disaggregated data. Sometimes looking at the big picture stuff can be difficult, like I said, because many of those things PBIS would help are not necessarily going to deal with those higher end sort of functioning things. Much of those are things that we can't control, whether or not a kid brings a weapon or whether or not they're bringing drugs on campus, those things with PBIS. So I think there's a limitation there.
Okay.
I just had similar things to say as Trustee Van Sant about, are our investments the wisest and making sure that we're getting the biggest return on our investments. And I think, suspensions are up 20% over 3 years. That seems odd. And I think chronic absenteeism, I bet there's a lot of best practices out there that we don't need to reinvent. And I'm wondering if we've done a literature review and are we focusing in on those things? One of the ideas here, it says, they reviewed the data, liaisons will meet with communications specialist and hiring a Native American community liaison. You know, the first and the third sound totally logical to me. I'm not sure why the liaisons, I'm not sure what the thought is about communications specialist. Is that so that we have a county, like a community-wide strategy to support schools, like working with police and things like, and shop owners and things? Or is that more skill building among the liaisons themselves?
So it's kind of all of the above, but also one of the things we talked about with the liaisons and also for attendance to realize is we just added a group of kids to our data that's the worst attending kids there are statewide, TKs. So one of the things to realize is that we just added a group that statewide is over 20% chronically absent. So it also tweaks your numbers. I don't think people are realizing we just added this group that's going to drag you down. So not coming down too much is kind of a big deal because, again, our percentage is around 21% for TKs. Also, what we thought about of wanting to come up with something with Gendy, for example, communication with the liaisons is a lot of it is attitudinal. Obviously, the kids are very young. They're going to be sick a lot more. But part of what we're doing is looking at those families and talking to them about the attitude of the importance of school. Because one of the things, we had our meeting yesterday, for example, this is a big topic at our liaison meeting, is talking about the attitude where you even have families where they may have 3 kids who are sick, and only the kinder or TK kid is staying home because they're attitudinal, they're younger, the importance of school maybe isn't the same, that people don't value that the same way. And so we're seeing it's a little different approach we need to take for those guys and really getting out and talking to them about the importance at those early age. You know, I'm hitting those guys with some of the statistical data of kids who aren't there by 3rd grade and missing those things. Because just the sheer value when they talk with parents is very different between a kindergarten student and a 5th grade student. Parents seem to value it differently. So it's not just that they're getting sick and whether or not we bring little Billy, it's also the attitude of what is school more important. So part of what we're going to talk with parents about with the chronic absenteeism, especially for TK and kinder, is this sort of attitudinal importance piece. And really trying to push that as much as possible. We also do know, obviously, that little kids are getting sick more often and don't deal with it the same way that older kids do. But trying to show the importance as much as possible for families in those pieces and how important that can be as well.
I guess I would tend to pull the TK data out then, just so that I had a better sense of whether or not we were making progress.
Right.
Because I agree there are anomalies, those little beasts.
Yeah. But also,
want
one of the
skunk
things
it.
is I kind of don't want to, in that I want to really push everybody to see that this is such an important group, because when kids are not going to TK, we see how much they're struggling in kinder and those pieces. So, I mean, I think it's a group that we just have to work really hard to try to get them to succeed and make sure everybody's valuing those pieces as much as possible.
Do the liaisons and the principals get their own data by grade, by school?
So actually what happens, Ann, and it's really easy because, in fact, well, Monica just left, one of our liaisons, is that I give them a list of students, and on the right-hand side, at our Aries Analytics that we have now, and it's a moving target, obviously, because every day there's a different 10%. But what we have now is on the right-hand column, it shows the kid, is that it shows their percentage of what they have. So any kid that's around 90%, so if they're at 92 or 88, anyone who's below 90% on the right-hand column shows those families they're going to be calling and doing those pieces. Also, I create like bubble groups for them, you know, and how to highlight and how to look and prioritize your calls as you're making them home and talking to families about those pieces. And then also they received training 2 meetings ago on how to use Aries Analytics. Our data person now is building new pieces to the analytics for like the chronic pieces and for the suspension. So for example, now I can go on and track exactly every school, how many suspensions, concerns over kids getting to 10 days for special ed students, manifestation determinations. So I can monitor those things a lot better as well with the special ed director. And again, we can be more targeted. with our interventions as well.
Well, we could go on all night, so.
Yeah.
I won't. I guess that I just want to say, as has been said, I'm not satisfied with the progress either. I would like us to be getting better faster.
Right.
And so I guess I would turn it back to you all and say, how should we adjust? I mean, stay the course in every single area is probably not the best answer.
Right.
So I would just ask for the professionals to look at this and say, surely there are some course corrections that we should be making.
Sure. And like I said, I think that's kind of the point we're at too, and looking at attitudinal stuff and not just numbers and knowing stuff as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. I just had one quick question. Anne, you mentioned 20% increase in suspension rate? Where did that come from?
20% of 6.16 is going to give you 7.36.
Oh, 20% of this number. I see what you're saying. Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Katie? Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to say, I know this is always so frustrating, that students don't make better progress, and especially our English learners. And it's such an uphill battle, because when you're learning a second language, the thing you're always taught is that you don't speak, you speak only in that language. And I've been doing some sociological stuff around town, just listening to families, and I don't know whether or not their parents do speak English, but I do know that they speak only Spanish to them. And that just makes it more difficult for children. When I was learning Spanish, I was with 4 other Americans, who none of whom would speak to me in English, and that's why I learned Spanish so quickly. And I don't know what we can do about that. We only have children for 7 hours a day, and after that, they're just exposed to the language they're comfortable in. And whether we can encourage parents, we've talked about encouraging parents to learn English, we've talked about them, but I just wonder if there's anything else we can do in that area as well, other than increase preschool services, which a lot of school districts have done with LCAP money. And I also wonder if we have any data on which of our students have attended preschool and whether that has made any kind of difference, because that's what other school districts have found out.
And on the language, we actually encourage parents to speak to their children in any language. Their home language really does help them, and I don't mean that in a, that people aren't, but we want people to be conversing, talking, and because we know that that's, really good for students to get a stronger base in their home language. And it is a continued struggle, but we are working on really focusing on our English learners. And next year, we've had a strong focus on QTEL, which is Quality Teaching of English Learners. And we are really ready to move off of that and take what we learned from that and then really focus on that with our SSCs in our classrooms. Not that we're not doing it now, but a little more independently, and I think that will be, is going to be a good thing as we move forward in the future. So, but it is a challenge.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move along to resolution number 14 with Superintendent Kubin.
Yes, before the board tonight is a resolution that will declare Ukiah Unified School District a safe haven district. And on December 21st, State School Chief Tom Torlakson encouraged all California public schools to be declared safe havens for students as well as their parents, as well as to remind families about existing laws that protect student records from questions about immigration status. And so this proposed resolution does that. It details to our staff and to our families process related to questions about immigration status. And so this resolution is really here to support our immigrant families in our community. I don't know if you want me to read it or.
Fabulous. I don't know if you have to do the whole thing, but I'm just saying fabulous that we're doing it.
Do we have questions or comments from the board?
I have a question. I remember years ago when my kids were little, doing kindergarten registration at Calpella, and I thought at that time we couldn't ask for anything or do anything about the kids. As long as they had some kind of birth certificate, regardless of where it came from or where their parents came from, we were told, fine, do it. So is this just a duplication?
This is just a clarification of mostly existing practices and
that's what I
laws
thought.
already.
Okay. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Trustee Fernandez?
I was wondering, I think this is great, and I was wondering if this is going to be communicated to maybe our Spanish language newspapers and radio stations and our parent liaisons, so that they are sort of well-versed in this, if they can help support our families who may be fearful.
Yes, we plan to communicate it next week. I've already sent it out to the school sites today and to the family community liaisons. We have it in English and in Spanish. And so we will be distributing it widely next week. And we will make sure that we also have a press release that we're working on as well.
Good.
So.
Great.
Trustee Mompere?
If we're trying to be helpful to parents also, the ACLU actually has a one-page, very condensed statement of 10 things that teach you exactly what to do, so that what your legal rights are. But it's much small. It's really well done, and I'm sure it's available. And if, I thought it would be something that would be really good to have or send home with parents or whatever, but because it's so short and specific about what your legal rights are and what to be careful of.
Barbara did a nice job putting together a presentation for the last DLAC committee that helped inform parents about their rights. And that was distributed to the school sites and family community liaisons as well. So, and we're also, I think Migrant Education is going to be hosting an information night on February 28th at Grace Hudson to help parents of immigrant parents know what their rights are.
Trustee Nelson?
I move that we accept resolution number 14.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, moving on to operational systems. Penny's going to talk to us about E-rate.
Jason Griswold.
And Jason.
My backup. Just to give you a brief background, in December 2015, the board approved the first phase of our technology infrastructure upgrade that would be partially funded by E-rate and the remainder funded by one-time funds. Since that approval, our E-rate consultant went to bid for the first phase of the project, and AT&T was awarded the contract. As time passed, the project did not progress. The E-rate funding has a deadline for that first phase of the project. An extension was requested and granted, and again, adequate progress was not made by AT&T. A second extension was asked for but denied just recently. And we are still eligible to apply again for this E-rate funding, so we're not expecting to lose any funding. However, what does happen is that our contract with AT&T will now be terminated And that's according to a clause within the contract that states if E-rate funding is not received, then the contract is terminated. So what happens now is that we need to, work with legal counsel on that contract termination, and then our E-rate consultant will go to bid again. This actually may be a better solution for us because now we'll be able to separate, is the best word, the equipment portion of the project and then the fiber cabling portion of the project into two separate contracts. And we're pretty much expecting that we can realize a cost savings overall because of that. But that'll be determined when we receive the bids. So our new timeline for the project is that our E-rate consultant will prepare new bid documents now and advertise for responses in February. In March, we'll receive those responses, and then a contract award would be recommended. In April, we'll bring it to you as the board to approve the contract, and possibly at that time, any termination wording for the AT&T contract. And then the E-rate consultant will submit another application to E-rate, which in October, which is the standard time frame, we will learn whether we're awarded the E-rate funding again, which we would expect that we would be because there's a set-aside amount for us. And then when approved, the project would move forward until completion. So, do you have any questions? Because here's Jason if you do.
And we are.
What did you say?
And we are recommending that
Yes.
the approval of a rebid on the E-rate network infrastructure upgrade project to include all three phases of the project.
So moved.
Oh, yay.
Seconded.
Doesn't mean there can't be more discussion. Just
Okay.
wanted to get the motion.
All in favor?
Oh, okay.
Aye.
Aye.
I guess there won't be any more
Okay,
discussion.
great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I didn't figure it could be expanded.
Like I was going to ask a question on that.
Next, we have the initial proposal for 2016-17 UTA negotiations. So Nicole Gwetzer?
Yes.
Speak to that.
UTA has identified Section 6 class size of the UTA contract for the 2016-17 negotiations. When agreements are reached, they will be presented for review to all stakeholders as a conceptual agreement. Tentative agreements will be offered to the Board of Education for ratification at a regular public meeting.
Okay, any questions?
I move acceptance of the, move acceptance.
Do you have a second?
I'll second, but I also have a question. I don't understand why we're in February for this. I thought these.
This should have, well, I had this to bring last month and didn't get it on the board agenda in time.
But I thought it was usually like an early fall.
Our contract does not put a time limit on when something is sunshined.
Oh, should we talk about that at some point?
We certainly could.
We could sunshine about how we have to talk about sunshining?
Sure.
Okay. Not this year, because we didn't sunshine.
We still have time.
Yeah, maybe we do.
I think we're getting a little
Thumbs
more.
down, yes.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of accepting the proposal for negotiations?
Aye.
All right, the next one is also you, Nicole. You could have just stayed up there. Approval of the resolution for elimination of classified position.
So we are actually reducing two positions. One is a preschool director that we're reducing in hours from 7 hours to 5.5 hours. I'm sorry, grabbed the wrong thing here. And then a paraprofessional that is being reduced to 3.5 hours. That position currently is vacant, so there's no one impacted by that. The special ed director position is not vacant. So we worked with CSCA on this.
You mean the preschool director position?
Preschool director. What did I say?
Special ed director.
Oh, wow. Okay. We're going a whole different direction now. Sorry about that. So we worked with CSC on this. The reason for these reductions is because of enrollment. So if we can't get the students there, we can't get the funding. So since we don't have the students, we're not going to be funded for the afternoon program. So we're going to move the students to other that are currently in the after-school program into other classes. We do have room for that. We are very hopeful that we will be able to reinstate these positions in the fall. I've spoken to our representative at the county, I forget her name now, Kristen, and to see what their thoughts are on this. And she said that as they've looked at this matter, they really think that this is an anomaly and that they would expect to see our numbers up in the fall as well.
We'll start with Trustee Mogart this time.
Okay. I don't think it's an anomaly because our unemployment rate is so low. When the unemployment rate is so low, that's what happens. It doesn't mean that children aren't out there. It just means we have to look harder for them. So I would rather put our energy into looking harder for them sooner so that we get them, just as Jason was talking about that attitudinal shift that we need in some families, and just showing them the research. And it sounds like you have to show them a big book, but just showing them the graph of kids who read by 3rd grade who went to preschool versus kids who don't read in 3rd grade who didn't go to preschool. You know, just that one chart, it doesn't have to be a PhD. It convinces most families. And so I would be happy to help, you know, on the brainstorming session for how we can do that. And I had assumed that was part of the family and community liaison job, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe that wasn't one on their priority list of tasks, because I'm sure they have way more to do.
They're focusing more on what's going on at the elementary schools or at the schools where they're located, and the preschools don't have family community liaisons.
Right, but if it's on the same site as you have no obligation for it as the family and community liaison?
This is not, I'm not, this is not on the same site. This is on the adult school, which is next door to Frank Zeke, but it's not seen as the same site.
But the bottom line is, we'd love to brainstorm about it and
Sure.
get ideas. And we're doing a board presentation, I believe, in April.
April.
And I've always been curious about how the two systems are managing together. So
And then
it'll
you get
be,
the consortium leader who's
yes.
at MCOE. It is odd.
It'll be fun
It
to
is odd.
think through that
Yeah.
in April, I believe,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Moncur?
I'm just amazed that these programs aren't full. And I really think we need to have a serious discussion about what more could be done to fill them and consider other options. I know when the preschool was at Ukiah, it was always full because parents could walk from the motels and the low-income areas. I think when we have preschools at areas that are farther away, we can't draw the low-income children because those families don't have 2 cars. But I think there's a real need to brainstorm early learning with not just the school district, but all of the other programs which used to be done years ago. And just figure out why. And, you know, in my opinion, I'm coming from that school board conference. It's so important. And I think that one of the things that made it so effective when I was teaching there was that we did have one small bus. And I'm wondering if there are ways that we should even think about having one small short bus run in a highly intense area, like McCartney Manor or someplace that could take kids to a preschool, or that we ought to look about, is there a better location? That's one of the things that I discovered at the school board conference, that they really picked a location based on where the beds of low-income populations were. And I just think it's so important because the state is really looking to expand these programs, and if we're already functioning at a deficit, then we would be the last people on the list to get additional funding. And I know it's a headache in some ways, but I think it's so important, and the data proves it, that we really should have a task force on this topic. I'm biased, I admit.
Trustee Van Zandt?
I know we're going to talk about this in April, but maybe this is helpful to figure out what we need to talk about in April. I have a bias against shared responsibility programs. I don't think it works. And I'm thinking that perhaps MCOE thinks they're responsible for doing outreach for this program, and then, or we think MCOE should be, or I sometimes wonder if there's not clear, it's not clear whose roles and responsibilities, maybe I'm not clear on whose roles and responsibilities are around these preschools, but I do think that that's worth looking at. I mean, I haven't felt like Ukiah has felt like we're supposed to be doing the outreach so much, or we think MCOE is. Is it possible they think we are? So there could be some communication issues there between the two organizations who are supposed to be in charge of these preschools. I also really urge us to look at the model. I think 3 hours a day on a school schedule is totally unrealistic for a working family. I know New Morning Preschool has a long wait list and always has, and that's one of the few that provides sort of a full-time preschool designed for working families. So I would never go to one of these preschools because the hours would never have worked for me. I know I'm not necessarily the demographic you were looking for, but never would. I wouldn't even have considered it. So I think there are families that don't even consider the state preschools because of the hours. So.
So one of the drawbacks, I hear what you're saying, one of the drawbacks of moving to a 6-hour preschool program is that we would only be able to serve half the number of families that we are now.
Yep.
And so historically, it has not been an issue to fill all of our state preschools. And this year, again, I respect Trustee Mulgard's statement, but I believe that when we're looking at historically where we've been, even in good budget times and not so great, we've always filled our preschools, and I think this is potentially a one-off, short-term problem that we would hope to resolve next year.
Let's hope so. That would make this easy. That'd be great.
So has the federal rate at which you can participate in state preschool, the amount of income that you can make in order to qualify for preschool, has that changed?
I don't believe that it has in recent.
I don't believe it has either. So if that hasn't changed, but everybody's earning more money as inflation goes, it's not, that's nothing we can do anything about, besides advocate for a change in the rates.
I can look into that and get you a more concrete answer, though.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, we do need a motion to approve the elimination of the classified position at the preschool.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Can I have one quick question? Is this going to affect the amount of money we get next year? Are they likely to eliminate our slots because of this?
I asked them that, and no, they anticipate giving us the amount that we've previously had, but that would again be if they see, say, in August, September, that we don't have the numbers, then they would not. And so for the purposes of because we are the employers, but they give us the money, what we've agreed with CSEA is that if this is reinstated up until October, but when I spoke with Kristen, They would expect to reinstate it much sooner than that so that we could start the school year. But again, if they get enrollment sheets, and if they don't get the enrollment sheets, then we're not going to hire the staff for a program that we don't have students for.
Okay.
Another question?
Well, I was just gonna say just something else that I would want to talk about at our workshop is combining with another funding source, such as Head Start, which is also a 3 or 4 hour program, because oftentimes that makes for a better consistency of kids.
Okay. All in favor of this motion?
Aye.
I vote no.
Opposed? Okay. One vote no. Okay. Parent and community partnership, we have Superintendent Kuban's report.
Briefly, a couple of positive things. One is this week is National Random Act of Kindness Week. We've had some really neat activities going on in our schools. I've only posted one so far on Facebook, but I've got a few more to go. There are some really neat projects going on in our schools. So I think kindness and how we treat each other, and Lisa, your column was just right on point, is so important in our organization, and the models that we can be for kindness and respect, I think, are vital. I've also been thinking lately about the passage of our Safe Haven resolution and the importance. There's a lot of fear in our community right now, and I think our schools are places of comfort and safety for families during these really difficult times. And I want to see us continue to focus there and focus on the stability that we provide our students. Finally, just kudos to the Calpella staff on Tuesday. I'm always, you can tell a lot about an organization by how they respond in a crisis. And seeing all the staff out with kids, listening to music and playing on the field while their school was cleared for safety, just really warmed my heart. They handled things very beautifully at that school, and I'm really, really proud of our staff. And with that, I will put everything else in my Friday communication to the board, which will probably be on Tuesday.
Okay. At this point, I will ask for any questions about the consent agenda. Does anybody
We're not
have
doing
any
board
questions?
member reports?
Board member reports.
Oh, board member reports.
Apparently, some board members have a lot to say.
No, I don't have a lot to say, but
All right, thank you, Trustee Van Zandt.
I don't think I'm going to be adding to the knowledge of the board, but I wanted to respond a little bit to what you just commented on, a climate of some concern and fear on our campuses, and also relevant to the resolution we just passed. I feel like, this is just anecdotal, but some of our teachers and staff are struggling with how to talk about what's going on, and not sure what their rules are, boundaries are for teachers, and guidance on how they can talk about some of the concerns students are having, or some of the opinions students have in their classroom and on their school campuses. And I'm just bringing that up because some teachers have asked me for advice on, like, do you think I could say this, or do you think I should sign this? And I'm like, you know, I'm not in a position to give that kind of advice, but it's not, I just think that might be something that you might want to think about, Deb. Or I don't know where they can get that kind of guidance, but I'm noticing it might be something that would be helpful, so that they feel comfortable exercising their free speech rights, you know, being accessible to students, being open, but not, I would hate some of our teachers to put themselves unnecessarily at risk and without knowing what their guidelines are. So, I don't know, just passing that on to you to do whatever you would do with it. Okay.
Okay, other board member reports.
This is not a report, this is my obsession with books, but I just came across, it relates to this topic. It's a book called The Golden Rule. It's a children's picture book. It describes in the beginning, it's a grandfather walking with his son, and he comes across something that talks about the Golden Rule. And the grandfather explains that every religion has their own version of the Golden Rule, but basically what it means is that you treat other people the way you would want them to treat you. And the grandson goes on to figure out ways, and it relates to bullying and other things, that he could be a person who would earn his grandfather's admiration by following those rules. And it lists 6 different religions and explains it to them. It's a fabulous book. Well, because it's somewhat of a little abstract concept, but I think the way they do it, you can really break it down. And by relating it to everyday things that happen to children, I'd say 4, except my grandchildren are precocious, so I would say 4 to 8 easily, because you can expand it in the dialogue. But it's a book every school should have at this particular moment. Anyway.
Thank you. Anything else, board members? All right, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda if no one has any questions about those items.
I so move.
I second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So planning, are there any board members that have things they would like to bring up for future board meetings?
This is for you.
What's that?
I don't have any agenda items at this moment.
Oh. Anyone else? Anybody?
I have a question about our special board meeting on foster care. When we have a board meeting like that, do we let the foster care agencies know, or do we do anything to kind of encourage them to come, even if they're just here to observe? It would seem to me that it would be, we talked about it at Tapestry, and I would just think that it would be beneficial for them to know that we're discussing this topic and get some sense of where we're going on it.
We'll be happy to invite them.
Okay, thank you. Well, like Redwood Children's Services, Tapestry, anybody who's dealing with foster children and placing them and knows what requirements they might have. Thank you.
Debbie, can I ask a question? When's the deadline on submitting any questions or areas of
yes.
focus that the board would like on that workshop? I think our target is to get that presentation outlined and drafted by the end of February, so we can run it by a couple of board members prior to the presentation. So, okay.
Okay. Agenda planning, Debbie?
So, because of other people's thinking, Tuesday, February 28th at either 2:30 or 3.
I can do it. I'm happy to yield to somebody who wants to rack up hours, but I'm happy to do it if you need someone.
February 28th at 2:30 or 3, is that what you said?
What time again? I'll do it.
Okay, it's okay with me.
Does that work? Yes. At 2:30? 2:30 work for you.
So I'll do it next time.
2:30?
No, I think I did it, but I think it's not my turn yet, I'm just telling myself.
Oh, okay.
2:30 on the 28th.
Okay, so B's going to be there. Anyone else?
Okay.
Okay, guess that's it.
2:30 on the 28th.
We do have it where the workshop is on the 8th.
Well, because of,
It's okay, Deb.
yeah, there was gone.
Okay.
And so we, this board member, February is late. So everything else switched up.
So we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Seconded?
Okay, all in favor of adjourning at 9:10?
Nice job.